everyone, and welcome. This is Nabeela, and you're listening to me read my most recent article on Reimagine Success for Substack. Now, this week's article was inspired by a question I got in our community chat. Noha asked, what is by far one of the most common questions I get from most professionals? She asked, should I stay or should I go? What steps should someone take to prepare for a career transition? And how do you manage the fear and still take action? I'll answer these questions in a multi-part series of articles. Unlike many of my other posts, I'll delve into the technical details here, so please bear with me. Think of this like a mini tutorial on how to plan your career. And we cannot discuss career transitions without, of course, addressing the significant AI elephant in the room. So yes, this will be very AI-esque. All right. The career dilemma. At any given moment in your career, you may be standing at a professional crossroads, whether by design or by default. And regardless of how successful your career may be or how powerful or influential you are, there will be moments when something just feels off. I've also found this applies universally, whether you're in a corporate role, a small business owner, or a successful founder. At multiple points in your work life, you're going to have this nagging thought swirling in your mind. Should I stay the course, make a pivot, or take a giant leap? This is a challenging question by default, but for high achievers, it can be downright debilitating. And that's because part of the high achiever mindset is this instinct to preserve and protect what we've built. This preservation instinct is then coupled with a drive to push through discomfort and a desire to perform regardless of the cost, until inevitably the cost becomes too high. The antidote to avoiding what I call the preserve and protect freeze is three things. Number one, maintaining an overview. Number two, introspection. And number three, preparation. But how does one apply an overview and what needs to be prepared? Well, that's exactly what I want to talk to you through in the series of articles so that you can move with context, foresight, and alignment to your inner truths. It's a process that will allow you to examine the big picture, aka maintain an overview, align your personal intentions, also maintain and have some introspection, and number three, define your path, which is the preparation. To be done correctly, though, it requires rolling up your sleeves, doing some solid thinking and research. To keep it simple and digestible, I'll tackle one step at a time over the coming weeks. This week, we'll focus solely on step one, which is maintaining an overview. All right, let's get into it. Scan the horizon and maintain an overview. This is the step most people sense but don't take the time to understand fully. To make the right career and life decisions, you always need to start by zooming out. Zooming out allows you to gain a better understanding of the broader terrain, including developments in your industry, the economy, and the disruptive trends shaping the world of work. Now, you might be thinking, this is pointless. We're always in a state of disruption. And yes, that's true. However, when it comes to disruptive events, especially those triggered by technology, it's essential to understand where we are in the technology maturity curve and how specific sectors will be impacted. This curve is often referred to as the technology adoption life cycle or the Gartner hype cycle, which is basically a fairly predictable cycle that articulates the journey technology will take from being considered disruptive to becoming widely adopted to business as usual. Just a quick distinction between these two models. The technology adoption life cycle explains who adopts technology and when, and the Gartner hype cycle explains how public perception evolves from hype to reality. Both of these things are important indicators of how customer behavior will shift and thereby how companies will react or be affected. I know it's an overused example, but my favorite example is Uber, because there was a time in the early 2000s when the idea of using your phone to call a random stranger to pick you up and take you somewhere for a fee was considered wild and disruptive. Now, we don't even think about it. It has become business as usual. We allow complete strangers to drive us around, drop off our dinner, and stock our fridges without a second thought. Another important consideration is that different technologies have varying adoption curves. Consumer technologies such as smartphones and social media often have a shorter adoption curve, typically spanning 3 to 7 years, while enterprise technology, including cloud computing or CRM tools or SaaS tools, may take 5 to 10 years. And deep tech solutions like AI or blockchain often require longer, 7 to 15 years. Here's some concrete examples. Cloud computing, for example, took 10 years. AWS launched in 2006 and broad enterprise adoption was in 2016. Smartphones took about 5 years from the launch of the iPhone in 2007 to full market penetration. And generative AI is still in its early stages, but it is ramping up very, very quickly in the adoption curve. Okay, I know this is not a tech blog, so you're probably asking where am I going with all this. Technology, along with other major social events, such as things like the 2008 financial crisis or COVID-19, are the macroeconomic changes that have the most significant impact on careers by far. Technology changes consumer behavior, which in turn changes business strategy, leading to business transformations and subsequently impacting jobs, which then drive the adoption of more technology, ultimately continuing to influence consumer behavior. Let me illustrate this example a bit further with the example around consumer tech adoption and its impact on jobs and society. While 2007 was the breakthrough of consumer tech, its influence was already growing in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Now imagine you were paying attention to technology, its maturity curve, and anticipating how it might affect jobs and careers. Imagine if in the late 1990s you were keeping an overview, strategizing, and planning what you might do professionally, entrepreneurially, or from a skills development. What decisions could you have made? What choices could you have made? What businesses could you have built? But here's the thing. Most people are not paying attention to the slow swell of disruptive change or anticipating its peak or when it will crash. Most people are just being moved around by the current, relatively unconscious of what it will mean on their careers and lives. Because this is the thing that most people don't realize. Disruption is rarely sudden. It builds quietly before breaking out. To continue demonstrating the importance of paying attention to macroeconomic factors, the following graph illustrates the technology adoption lifecycle of consumer tech, enterprise tech, and deep tech across the timeline from 2000 to 2015. Now let's zoom in one more time to the dot-com and personal tech era of the early 2000s, 2010. During this period, traditional industries, including newspapers, bookstores, and magazines, underwent significant disruption. Newsrooms and media outlets had to shrink and reinvent themselves. Some survived, but most didn't. There was a complete disintegration of traditional news-telling roles, and in its place, it gave rise to public relations and communications-related jobs. Below is a graph of this shift based on Bureau of Labor Statistics data from 2012. In 2012, if you were a journalist, you were looking at a median salary of $37,000, as well as a 13% decline in job growth. On the other hand, public relations professionals earned a median salary of $54,000 and were projected to experience a 12% growth in the job market. Now, in my article, I've laid over the technology adoption curve with the Bureau of Labor Statistics data to show how those things are related. And in my opinion, this is an extremely powerful and compelling picture because place yourself as a high-performing journalist or news media professional back in 2010. If you were looking at this graph then, you could see the shift. You could go beyond just the budget cuts, the layoffs, and the hiring freezes, and you can imagine where the job market was going. If you had this data back then, which was available, what decisions could you have made? What would you have considered to be your choices? And you could have planned that pivot a lot more successfully because there's several things you can do once you understand the macroeconomic current and where it's going. For example, for the case of a journalist in 2010, they could have pursued additional education and certification in public relations. They could have worked as a contractor or freelancer in public relations to build up a portfolio. They could articulate how their skills in journalism and news professions and media profession could translate into public relations. For example, the savvy journalists brought their newsroom networks into the corporate world, which proved to be a very compelling competitive advantage. They could have intentionally rebranded themselves online in every way possible, and obviously create a network of other journalists and professionals who are making this pivot, so they had references, referrals, and an inside network to access. Now, let's use a more timely and relevant example. Someone recently approached me and mentioned they had just graduated from university with a degree in data science and now looking for an entry-level data analyst role. I grimaced a bit before I told them that won't nearly be enough and they needed to rethink their entire career. Below are the career growth prospects for data analysts in Toronto, according to Stats Canada Job Bank. If you're in Canada, that's where you would go to look at the trajectory of jobs, and you'd go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics occupational outlook if you're in the US. Now, keep in mind that government data has significant lag. So in this case, the Canadian data does not yet reflect the actual impact of AI. Even so, a data analyst shows moderate growth prospects. So if you're in a job with low to moderate growth, that is a significant signal to consider planning a pivot. Though the maturity model of AI is still early, adoption is happening at an unprecedented rate, and the next 5 years will be dizzying. The hiring slowdowns, the restructuring, the workforce reductions you're seeing, that's companies changing their business strategies and preparing for an organizational transformation. Okay, back to my data scientist student. They have two things that they need to do. They need to AI-ify their skills, which includes upskilling themselves for how data science will change with AI. And they also need to focus on getting experience in a more stable industry. Here's what a development plan could look like if I were them. Their AI career development plan with a goal that says to build a future-proof AI-enhanced career path, deepening technical skills, gaining real-world experience, and strengthening uniquely human capabilities that AI cannot replace. They would have a strategic focus of strengthening technical fluency in machine learning and LLM development, apply AI to real-world domains and problems, cultivate human power skills such as communication, ethics, and critical thinking, build a public portfolio and a professional presence, and track emerging AI roles and adjust the trajectory accordingly. I've also listed a 6-month development plan that includes building their core skills in machine learning and natural language literacy, as well as how they could create domain applications, showcase and ship their experience, as well as create visibility and career planning. Now, even all of that won't be enough. Now, you might be thinking that data scientist student has it easy as they're a technologist and they can just learn AI. Unfortunately, that won't be enough either, because hundreds of thousands of data scientists, like journalists back in 2010, will be flooding the marketplace trying to do the same thing. Microsoft recently commissioned research to study the impact of AI on jobs, and it has just released its findings. I've included the table based on the research, which shows that the top 40 occupations with the highest AI applicability score, indicating they are the most likely to be disrupted by AI. If you scan this graph and you look at the far left, you'll also see the number of people employed in those jobs, and data scientists are on the list, all 192,000 of them. I've also included a list of the lowest AI applicability score, meaning least to be impacted by AI. Which is why, in addition to establishing the AI fluency needed just to do the job of the future, you also need to upskill yourself in the things AI will struggle to do, the human aspects of being human. Because despite the constant wave of chaos and disruption the world keeps throwing at us, humans will still need or want humans to do things. And the individuals who are capable of adapting to technology by learning it and using it to augment what they do and are good at doing the human things like nurturing and building trust or being physically present or harnessing, leveraging emotional intelligence and applying ethical judgment will be the individuals who differentiate themselves. Roles rooted in care, creativity, crisis management, or culture where nuance, unpredictability, and relationship building are critical will prove far more resistant to automation than repetitive or purely cognitive tasks. In this new era, your employability won't be defined by technical skills alone, but by a professional's capacity to center the human experience. Those who can collaborate with AI while doubling down on distinctly human capabilities will not only survive the AI revolution, they will also lead it. Now what? To answer Noha's question, you need to start by getting your head above water and intentionally move from being swayed by the current and start riding the wave. Yes, it is overwhelming, but you can get a handle on it. Begin by gaining an understanding of the reality of disruptive technology and its potential impact on your industry. The data and resources are available. You just need to take the time to examine them. Move out of overwhelm and reading headlines and roll up your sleeves. Because we can't all become electricians or psychotherapists. However, we can all take ownership and responsibility for preparing ourselves for what is to come. At the bottom of my article, I've included resources to the Bureau of Labor Statistics Occupational Handbook for Job Growth Outlooks in the U.S., Stat Canada Job Outlook Predictions for Job Growth in Canada, the Microsoft AI Job Impact Research, data on AI maturity by industry, and more about the Gartner hype curve. In my next article, I'll talk about how to zoom in and do some introspection so that once you have a handle on terrain, you can make intentional choices to travel through it. P.S. I took a markedly different approach with this week's article, and I would love to know what you all think. Leave me a comment, let me know your thoughts, and anything else that you might want to see or hear from me. I also hope that if this was beneficial, you'll share it with your network. I also want to share that I've opened up our Reimagine Success chat to all subscribers, free and paid. So feel free to join the chat. Let me know what other questions you have or other topics you'd like to see me discuss. And soon we'll be hosting our very first live on Substack called Ask Us Anything. I'll be inviting some of my favorite CHROs and HR professionals to join me so that we can have a conversation about anything that you guys have on your minds, and host an Ask Us Anything session. So more details to come on that. As always, take care of yourself and those around you. In partnership, Nabeela.